the next version will say 2 words, remote control.
So we're joined by Kevin Steinberg, who is not only the head of the World Economic Forum's United States office based in New York, but is also teaching the first class on the World Economic Forum and global policy here at Brandeis University's International School of Business. Kevin, you've been with the World Economic Forum for a very long time. It's grown from being an organization that was primarily viewed as a conference organizer to something that has become really the world's premier multi-stakeholder diplomatic platform. Where do you see it going?
Well, Prog, thanks for having me, and I'm glad you could join me here today. In terms of where the forum is heading, I think the forum is growing in many ways. It's really grown beyond its initial origins as an event-focused organization to one that plays a pivotal role for the global community. More specifically, it now engages its constituents, its members, its partners, government, academia, media, and others in cooperative efforts to really address the foremost challenges that the globe is facing.
So people always want to know, where is the forum making a difference? They see Davos happen every year, and they're saying, what came out of it? How has the world changed? How has an issue been addressed? Can you give us a couple of recent examples?
Well, let me give an example of a new program which I'm overseeing, which we call our Risk Response Network. This is a new effort under the umbrella of the World Economic Forum to bring global leaders together to better understand, prepare for, and hopefully capture opportunities associated with risk, and more specifically, associated with systemic risks. That is, some of the most challenging problems that are not only difficult to surmount, but are difficult to figure out how they relate together, how they influence one another. In the coming months, we're putting together a number of efforts to focus on cybersecurity and resiliency, thinking about the impact of currencies and how they may be volatile over time, thinking about supply chain disruption, and thinking about a number of other elements, all of which we hope will have a significant impact over time.
Now, has the inclusion of so many non-state groups, NGOs, media, and government officials, in addition to the corporate membership, has that watered down the forum, or has that enhanced it in your view?
Well, from the very beginning, those are very important components of the World Economic Forum. From its origins over 40 years ago, it was already a dialogue that brought together government with business and academia. So I wouldn't describe that as a dramatic change. To the contrary, I think it's something we've been doing for a long time. Now, all that being said, having all of these constituents around the table, having all of them contributing, is fundamental to the World Economic Forum and what we do.
Now, explain to people the relationship with the private sector in terms of influence, because when you take the example of the financial crisis, the forum was out in front warning actually about systemic risks through the financial system, and then of course many companies, particularly banks, didn't listen, and then the financial crisis happened, and the forum actually said in a way sort of, we told them, we warned them. And while a lot of people from the outside view the forum as being something of a control mechanism of the financial sector and of the private sector in general, which obviously it isn't, on the other hand, we see that it wasn't able to shape that behavior. So in that tension, in that relationship, in what areas do you see the forum really able to shape the behavior of its member companies?
Well, first, let me note that I think the forum, like many institutions, didn't fully understand what was going to take place.
Right.
We had a number of different companies, a number of different experts thinking about issues related to systemic resiliency, thinking about possible failures. And those organizations and people ranged from academics to business people to regulators to governments and many others. In terms of how the forum engages with the private sector in particular, we find that having the right working groups, having dialogues, having task forces and initiatives that bring together those various parties to work on some of these issues can always be helpful. So for example, during the financial crisis, we had actually been working on a project that was launched well before it started, looking at the future of the financial global architecture, thinking about how some of the shifts would happen and what the implications might be. The project focused on the increasing shift from the public markets to the private markets. It focused on shifting financial centers of gravity, financial centers from the west to the east. We found in time that those are very profound changes that are indeed happening. And in fact, some of these that were foreseen were accelerated as a result of the crisis. So we found that thinking about scenarios of what might take place, thinking about protectionism, thinking about resilience, proved to be very helpful to regulators, governments, and private sector organizations, all grappling real time with how to deal with the crisis.
So is the World Economic Forum a role model for global governance?
Well, I would say the World Economic Forum is a very interesting model in one regard. It's that it gives a voice to various parts of society. It's not an intergovernmental organization which focuses exclusively on the public sector. It brings together a voice from government, together with the private sector, together with NGOs, together with media, together with academics, faith leaders, and cultural leaders, and others. And I think that is something very important and profound. If we're going to address these problems, from climate change to increasingly scarce resources, if we're going to think about some of the moral and ethical issues, having all parts of society in the tent is very important. And I would at least assert that having all of these contributors will lead to better answers and at least better thoughts in terms of what we can do.
Finally, Kevin, the typical foreign policy viewer around the world is an ambitious and intelligent person who probably wants a ticket to Davos. Can they get one?
Well, the way to come to Davos is a complicated one. The way one can think about it is we really reach out to the leaders of many parts of society, heads of government, heads of companies, leading experts of academic institutions like this one and many others. And so if one wants to come to Davos, really the way to do it is to contribute via your own constituency. If you're a leader from an NGO, that's a way to come to Davos. If you're a leader from a public sector institution, a private sector institution, that's how we get people involved. So if you ask the question how to get there, the answer is reach out and make a difference wherever you are, whatever constituency you're busy with and representing, and that should get you involved with us.
Make a difference and the forum will find you. Thanks very much, Kevin.
Thank you.